Well, hello, people of Nampa First. It is so good to be with you. My name is Pastor Brian Loeber. I'm the communication pastor here, and I am joined today by Sharon Mowry. So you have to clear this up before we go any farther. The last name, is it Mowry or Mowry? How do we pronounce it?
We say it Mowry.
Mowry.
Sharon Mowry.
Mowry. That's right. Okay.
And I tell people I don't have to explain that. I just married into it.
Just married into it. But hey, at least we've concluded one thing today, Sharon Mowry.
That's
all right. She is our NMI, which is Nazarene Missions International Council President. And so we are here today to talk a little bit about the global missions that Nampa First is involved in and some of the vision for the future. It's a really exciting conversation, and we even have a couple of exclusive announcements to share in this video as well. So Sharon, let's first talk about, give us just kind of some context for this conversation. How has Nampa First been involved in the global mission through the Nazarene Church throughout the years?
Well, it's an amazing story from Nampa First. We have more than 100-year history. And during that whole time, Nampa First Church has been very pivotal in sending missionaries around the world, supporting them. A while back, some of you might remember that we did some of the historical things about pioneer missionaries.
Right.
And as I was doing the research for those, I was astonished at how often Nampa First Church came up in terms of sending people, supporting people, going for work and witness trips. And the thing is that over the years, and this was not a bad thing at all, but we sort of, with our funds that we collected and the places we went, we kind of did a scatter shot.
Sure.
We sort of, if a missionary came and our hearts were touched, we would give them a great offering.
Sure.
We would even sometimes support people. We formed short-term partnerships in parts of the world, but it was a little bit here and there.
Yeah. Kind of a shotgun blast, maybe.
It was, and it was great.
Of love and support. So
and
it's good.
Support.
Yeah.
And God used all of
Absolutely.
that around the world. But over the last few years, we've begun to think as a council and as a church with the considerable resources that our people are so generous to give.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps at this point in history of our globe and our church, we could make a more targeted, specific dent in reaching some of those unreached people groups that have been identified now all around the world. And there are people literally who've never heard the name of Jesus yet.
Right.
And so our council, even before I joined the council, did some wonderful work with doing what's called a maximum impact plan.
Okay.
It's basically a strategic plan to say, if we were to target and really try to determine specifically what would God like us to be doing right now at this point in history, what might that look like? And so Larry McMillan facilitated that plan process, and it took many months and lots of prayer. So the upshot of that, and it's maybe 60 pages, so this is a real condensation. But the upshot of that was that we believed if we found Nazarene partners in specific places in the world that already had a plan to impact this kind of people, groups, how could we come alongside and move that along a little quicker, become part of the excitement of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so with that in mind, as I came on to the council and we began to explore what might that look like, now we have the kind of theory, how will it play out? We began to look at the sort of informal partnerships we already had. And one of those was with Cuba. Our people know that we've sent many teams there. We've helped them build churches. Perhaps you remember that there are no missionaries in Cuba now, but the national church is vibrant and alive and well, and really reaching out. So there was that potential. And then many of you also know we've been sending teams to Thailand for several years now through Mike Watanabe's work.
Lots of young people going.
Yes, families going. And so we kind of had a natural connection there. Yeah. And so we began to explore those where we had natural links already. Yeah. A couple of summers ago, David Phillips, who was the field strategy coordinator for Southeast Asia, was in the States for a period of time. And so we flew him out from Ohio and spent 4 days with him with our Global Missions Partnership Group. And at the Mission House, we just kind of explored together, what might a partnership look like? What kind of needs do you have? What kind of needs do we have? How would our partnering benefit the speed of what you could do?
Which I just love that. I love Nampa First posture in that, of coming in and saying, how can we empower what God is already doing in your midst? It's not just, here's our agenda, let's just copy and paste it to your area. So I love the spirit with which your council is strategizing with.
And in all honesty, much as our motives were good, we've done that sometimes in the past.
Where
absolutely. We said, oh, isn't this a great idea? Here's the money, do what we said.
Great heart behind that. Great motives for sure. But I think this is a much more effective way.
So out of that 4 days, we began to design what a covenant might look like. And we haven't called it a contract. We've called it a covenant of what might we expect from one another in a partnership.
Now, why is that important? That's something, I had never really heard of until I saw.
We kind of made it up.
Maybe you did. Well, that's great. It was a great idea. So explain the reasoning behind that, and then what does that provide for both sides?
Well, in times past, when we've sort of had short-term informal partnerships, sometimes we've disappointed one another and we didn't even know it. Because we didn't have the understandings of, here's what's expected from us, here's what's expected from you, here's where we could partner together. And if we hammer those out together, then we all know where we stand. And
clear communication.
We don't have the other issues getting in the way of what God might want to do. And we're all human, it's going to happen. Even with a covenant, it may sometimes happen, but there'll be less of that.
I mean, you're crossing cultures, you're crossing a lot of barriers sometimes, and a huge divide. So this helps build that bridge as solidly as it can be.
And things in the covenant are things like both partners will bathe this in prayer.
Absolutely.
That's first. Another one is that we will try to determine what God is doing and enter into that, not come with our own agendas. And this is an interesting part, because we've had some challenges with this, but I believe we're to the point where we're saying to them in the covenant, we will identify together based on our strategic plan the areas where this money should go. But when it comes to deciding actual projects for the money, that will be up to you.
That's great.
And what
up to the local leadership.
And what we will ask for is an accountability.
That's great.
And so that's a big piece of that. And already, I mean, we'll probably get to this, but the Southeast Asia Partnership is giving us amazing accountability stuff already. The videos that show what they're doing and where and how the money's being spent.
And we have a couple of videos that are going to be debuting on our YouTube account really shortly after this one is posted. So you can go and check out some of the local leadership talking about what's happening in Southeast Asia. So that does lead to the next question of what has our investment already been in these areas? We mentioned trips. Have we already sent faith promise money? What are some of the other things that we've already been a part of?
Well, I do want to say we have done vision trips to both of these fields.
Now explain what that is.
A vision trip is where we send some leaders to actually meet the people, have them show us where God is at work, what they're doing, what their dreams and plans are if they have more help. And so we sent 3 of us to Cuba. We were going to send Pastor Tony, but he broke his ankle at the time. So
Tony.
So we missed him, but we had wonderful interactions there. And then we sent 7 of us to Southeast Asia. So that was Pastor Brian Thomas and John Hunter from the church board, and Stephen Jeannie Laird and Hugh Freeberg and myself. So and we visited 3 countries there. We visited Thailand and Myanmar and Cambodia and met leaders and heard their dreams and visions and plans, and it's humbling. It is humbling.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, as we came back, we also, I want to say about the covenants. The covenants I sort of generated out of the time with David Phillips, and then we sent them back and forth to Cuba, to Southeast Asia. We negotiated, we designed, we said, this would be clearer here, this would be clearer here. So it was definitely a partnership activity.
That's great.
And once we got that good solid draft of that covenant, then we took it to the council, who had been praying all along, we had a prayer initiative going with all the different prayer groups at Nampa First. The pastors that pray, the noon Wednesday prayer, there's a mission house prayer group, and we kept, and the prayer room, we had all this so that people could know how to pray.
The prayer
that
team
God
that
would,
goes out.
the prayer team, that God would lead us and that we not get ahead of him. So once that happened, then we took that covenant to the council for a formal vote to say, do we feel we're ready now to move? And I guess I want to say, at first, I thought maybe one partnership was going to be enough because it's a lot of plowing new ground, a lot of how do we do this, and Southeast Asia seemed the logical one. And then I went on the vision trip to Cuba, and God did a number on me. Those folks are doing amazing work with very little. The pastors get like $20 a month. I mean, and are usually told they can't hold a second job. So it's God really placed, and here was the thing that came clear to me. Southeast Asia, their model is a real discipleship model. They specifically, intentionally lead new people to Christ. They expect that person to take what they've learned and pass it to the next person. And when they get about 10 of those folks, they start a church. And it's amazing how that's working across that whole region. And we're tempted to think, wow, let's win the world this way. Well, then we got to Cuba, and their model is they have pretty strong mother churches. And they are developing within that mother church leaders coming up, specifically training them, and they begin to pray as a church, where's the next village, where's the next part of the city that we need to impact. And so they train this leader up and get them on the ordination track, if you will, begin to and see where God is laying on their heart, and then they start a daughter church. And most of these mother churches have started multiple daughter churches. So it's a very different model, a great model, and I think we would have been tempted to think, wow, we've found the secret to winning the world.
On both ways, on both sides of it, right?
And it's good for us to see God at work in very different ways, depending on the cultural context and what works in that area. And of course, in Cuba, we're much more restricted about, it's very hard to even sometimes get money there in a timely way. It's hard to get people in. We have to guard what we say in the emails back and forth. So it's a very, and there are a couple of what they call creative access countries also in Southeast Asia. So you will hear much less about Laos and about Vietnam.
Because we're not really welcome there. We can't fly our flag there.
Even though there's a whole lot God is doing. So
let me clarify one thing before we get to the announcements. Southeast Asia, is there a particular country in Southeast Asia, or are we adopting that whole region? I mean, we have had boots on the ground in Thailand for sure for many years.
Yes.
So is it country by country per trip, or are we adopting that whole kind of area there?
We're partnering with that whole field. It's a field.
Right.
Now in Cuba, we're partnering with a district.
Okay.
The West Cuba district.
Distinction. Mm-hmm.
And we're going, our main contact person there is Reverend Lionel Lopez, who's the district superintendent.
Okay.
He's also, interestingly enough, in Cuba, they require that each church that is practicing there has a president. So he's the president of the Nazarene Church.
Brian Thomas, don't get any ideas about a name title change. That's funny.
He's also in charge of the pastoral training for all. I did want to say the other thing that the covenants identify are what areas we feel our funds should support. And in Southeast Asia, those things are pastoral training and church planting and basically impacting unreached people groups. In Cuba, it's pastoral training, it's helping to support new church plants, and also there we were challenged by the Lord, I believe, to try to help them establish more youth camps.
Oh, cool.
There's a seminary there, which is not an on-site seminary. Most of their training is online, but the campus is still there. And it's a wonderful spot for camps. They have dormitories, they have a church for their chapel services, they have some apartments for other people that come to help. And so that is an addition to that. And actually, well, let's see, are announcements going to include work and witness trips, or
no,
can I say that now?
Yeah.
We had a trip to Thailand planned this summer, which we had to cancel. We're looking at perhaps a virtual work and witness trip to that area in the fall on Wednesday nights. So if you're interested, you could come do some Bible study around that, see some things from those areas, and also have direct contact with some folks from there virtually.
Exciting. Yeah.
But we do still have planned a trip to Cuba in November, and our project would be to finish the bathroom facilities for those dormitories so that they can more effectively have young people coming in. We have lots of young people called to ministry. One thing I've talked to the district superintendent there about is maybe we could have a specific time to help mentor those young people that feel called to ministry.
Absolutely.
And I get dreams like we could send some teens from here, and then they could go back to the villages and hold children's, so it goes on and on. But
man, I just love. I hope and I know it is the passion, the vision that is just coming right through the camera. I so appreciate that, and it's exciting. Some people might think about all the strategy and just, why do we need all that, and why do we have to be? But this I think is just a beautiful expression of global missions right now. And it's not, again, us bringing our own preconceived notions to this. It is prayer started, so it's Holy Spirit driven, that leads to the strategy, that leads to the trips, and it just I think paints a really beautiful picture. So
I did want to I didn't answer one of your questions you asked, because we have felt led as a council, and based on our budget capacity at this point, we have committed, God willing, $20,000 to each of these partnerships this year.
Great.
And because of the pandemic and the uncertainty of us meeting together and how that might come in, we have shared with our partners that we would do it in quarterly increments and that we would let them know each time. And so we have already sent 2 of the quarterly installments. So already $10,000 has gone to each of these partners. And I just need to say, God bless you for the generosity that you're giving. And just one quick thing, in Myanmar, and if you watch the other videos, you'll see Bill Kwan who's the field strategy coordinator, telling about the local missionaries they're sending to the Rakhine area, which is up in northern. And it's a group of people that are largely ignored by the government. They have no schools, they have no clinics, they have no clean water in many cases. And so local missionaries from what's the northwest Myanmar district have been called and are being supported by their district to go in and establish primary schools, help with medical things when they can, and in a couple of the villages have already been able to help with the water issue, largely through Nazarene Compassionate Ministries.
Awesome.
But when they send these missionaries, what they can't afford is a house for them. And so there's another village requesting, and there's a local missionary going, and we get to build a house.
Awesome.
It's a bamboo house. Great. It costs $3,200.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And it becomes the school, it becomes the church, it becomes the living place for that.
It's going to be so effective.
So isn't that exciting?
Very cool.
Already.
Awesome. What a great first
this
project.
Year.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get to the announcements. I'm excited about this. So our first announcement, we're talking about partners and covenants and all these kind of things, and we have another partner in the mission specifically to Southeast Asia. So hit us with the first announcement.
Well, we got contact from College Church here in Nampa, and they asked if they might consider partnering with us to partner with Southeast Asia, and we were like, wow, this is exciting. So actually we sent them the covenant, they've reviewed that, they've gone through their board, they have officially adopted this partnership, and we've already had a meeting with them. We'll be having more meetings. We hope in September to be doing a couple of joint things with Kevin and Jenny Campbell-White will be in town, God willing, if the airlines fly. And so we hope to do a joint something. So even, you know, as you see how God is providing, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's so cool. So then that would mean even trips would be co-sponsored, combined trips to South. I mean, I think that's a beautiful expression of the Nazarenes even linking arms together in the city to go and impact the world. So cool. That's a really awesome partnership. Second announcement is for our Faith Promise speakers next year, which are right in line with who we're partnering with.
Yes. So at the end of February next year, at our next Faith Promise, our speakers are scheduled to be Reverend Leonel Lopez, who's the district superintendent of the West Cuba district. He and his wife, Magdala, will be coming from Havana. And then Kevin and Jenny Campbell-White, who are the work and witness coordinators for that whole Southeast Asia field. And Kevin is the newly elected or appointed district superintendent for the Cambodia field.
Oh, wow.
Which I have to tell you, Cambodia was very impactful. It's like the whole country's sort of still in PTSD.
Wow.
And yet these pastors are working and
that's right in the thick of it.
Yes, it's powerful. It's not nearly as exciting as Myanmar because there's just such a depression on the country.
Wow.
But they need us, you know, to encourage and Kevin and Jenny are just amazingly positive people, and we need to pray for them especially.
Absolutely. So I mean, that's a great note to end on. Join us in prayer for how God would continue to lead our president and her council, the other leadership of the church, the leadership of College Church, the leadership around the world in the Nazarene Church. How God might move in your heart, whether that's the giving of your resources or your time, your talent, to join us on one of these trips, to be a specific partner in a really cool way. So those opportunities are definitely available and will be upcoming. So join us in prayer as we continue to walk forward in these partnerships. Well, Sharon, thank you so much. Man, just great content, great passion, great vision. We love it. We're excited for the future. And check out the other videos that are going to be up on YouTube, and we'll talk to you later.